Over the years, many of the stories we've reported from the Northern Panhandle have had consistent themes: the decline of the steel industry, the loss of high-paying manufacturing jobs, and boarded-up storefronts. In late 2005, the region received another big blow. The new corporate owner of Wheeling's Capitol Music Hall put an end to the Wheeling Jamboree. The Jamboree had been around since 1933. By the time its run ended, the Jamboree was the second oldest radio program in the country, just behind the Grand Ole Opry. But now a new nonprofit organization is trying to revive the Jamboree. A show is scheduled for April 12th. To understand what the Jamboree means to the region, we went through our archives. We thought it was appropriate to rebroadcast this outlook from 2004.
Ladies and gentlemen, since 1933, the legendary Wheeling Jamboree has touched the hearts of millions of country music fans, presenting the best in live country music entertainment. And now, live from the Capitol Music Hall in Wheeling, it's Jamboree USA.
Well, they're gonna put me in the movies. They're gonna make a big star out of me.
For over 70 years, Jamboree USA has shot many a star into the heavens, not on film, but through the radio.
In my hometown, the Jamboree is really very, very important. It's such a huge part of the culture of the Ohio Valley.
It's the second longest running live broadcast show, second to the Grand Ole Opry. Broadcast live over WWVA AM radio 1170, and it hits 18 states on the eastern seaboard and 6 Canadian provinces.
When you're in Nashville, people always refer to growing up with the Grand Ole Opry, but if you grew up in Pittsburgh, like I did, you didn't get the Opry. The Opry didn't penetrate the Appalachians, and particularly not the northern Appalachians. Our country music came to us from WWVA, the world's original Jamboree, which was on Saturday nights just like the Opry, and was every bit as exciting to a listener, and it's what really turned me on to country music.
If I had a chance just to be what I could be, I'd like to be the man in the moon.
In 1926, a year after WSM Nashville's first radio broadcast, WWVA in Wheeling took to the airwaves. The AM station introduced late-night Saturday listeners to what came to be known as the world's original WWVA Jamboree, a homey blend of country-style music and local talent.
There are those who say that there was country music on WWVA as early as 1926. But the Jamboree, the weekly show that we know today, is inaugurated in 1933.
In April 1933, WWVA gave in to listeners who wanted to see their musical favorites in person. The Jamboree moved from the studio to Wheeling's Capitol Theater.
Hello, Walls.
Though the show has found other venues, the Capitol has remained home to the Jamboree since 1969. Built in 1928, the hall is now West Virginia's oldest theater and home to both the Jamboree and the Wheeling Symphony Orchestra.
One of the things that gave the show its distinctive quality was the move to the Capitol Music Hall. That hall sounded great on the radio, and the audiences sounded terrific.
The theater received an eager crowd of 3,266 fans. Another 1,000 were turned away from a full house.
On Saturday night when our work is done.
It was held at midnight on April 1st, 1933, because this theater was actually a movie theater. So the show didn't start until the last movie was over, which happened at midnight. And so then everybody came just to hear local performers. There were no big names on those first shows of the Jamboree.
The performances were billed as the greatest shows on the air for a quarter, the price of admission. Robert K. Orman says even the Grand Ole Opry didn't have anything on the Jamboree when it came to pleasing the audience.
In fact, when I first saw the Opry, I was disappointed that the audiences were so sedate.
I'm going home in the morning.
When you listen to the Jamboree on Saturday night and like Wilma Lee and Stoney Cooper were playing, they rocked that joint. I mean, it was a loud, enthusiastic, whoop-it-up hillbilly audience that just sounded so much fun.
Oh, broken heart, come with your grief. Laid at the Savior's feet.
Shannon Tucker Wall says early on, the audience helped give the show its unique flavor.
The men that would come to the show would bring their cowbells from their farms, and they'd ring them. And so that way, over the air, the family would hear the cowbells ringing, and each cowbell has a different ring. So they'd listen for their husband's cowbell to know they made it to Wheeling safely. And still today, people bring in cowbells, and they ring them.
Despite its down-home appeal, the Jamboree became a trendsetter.
There were very, very few female stars at the Opry until well into the 60s. And from the get-go, WWVA had a large stable of female stars. They had a certain kind of moxie, and I think that is something that characterizes West Virginia's female performers.
One morning past daybreak, as the crowd slowly gathered.
Wilma Lee and Stoney Cooper became staples of the show.
When you hear Wilma Lee Cooper sing You Tried to Ruin My Name, or Walking My Lord Up Calvary Hill, I mean, you're hearing Mountain.
Now she drinks whiskey and she drinks gin. She puts me in the doghouse time and again. She does the doghouse boogie, doghouse boogie, the doghouse boogie.
The Jamboree also attracted West Virginians like Cabell County native Hawkshaw Hawkins and Raleigh County's Little Jimmy Dickens.
Just as Wilma Lee and Stoney Cooper had that rock'em sock'em, belted out mountaineer style, that was what Jimmy Dickens had too.
Well, I loved her then and I love her still. Cross my heart, I always will.
He was a no-holds-barred, reared-back Appalachian singer, just like Wilma Lee Cooper was. That was a certain quality that the Jamboree, many of the Jamboree acts had, was that sort of mountain sound.
In the beautiful hills, in the midst of her own county.
Then there was Andrew Smick, a.k.a. Doc Williams, who brought his Border Riders in 1937.
He was with the Jamboree longer than Roy Acuff was with the Grand Ole Opry. He truly was the king of that show and was its longest tenured member and was a really pretty tremendous entertainer.
Sitting by my trailer door, thinking of the days of yore.
Orman says Doc Williams offered a broad repertoire.
Western stuff, hoedown fiddling, some Eastern European influence polka stuff, and then there was Chicky, who had this wonderful mellifluous voice.
She's a flower from the fields of West Virginia.
It was a very honey-dripping kind of a voice that really drew you into that radio.
With sweet dreams of yesterday, even though I'm far away.
Before producing numerous hits in Nashville, Lionel Cartwright performed on the Jamboree, first in the 1970s, playing piano for Doc and Chicky.
Doc and Chicky were both big stars, again, back in the 30s, when the Jamboree was as high a profile as the Opry.
Between 1926 and 43, WWVA went from 50 to 50,000 watts. The Jamboree, in its first 20 years, became a national institution. Pieces of mail by the thousands arrived each week from nearly every state in the Union. As countless millions listened on the radio, over 1,750,000 fans flocked to Wheeling to see the show for themselves.
It's home for a lot of people on a Saturday night. They turn it on the radio when they can't come in, and when they're around the area, they stop right in to see it.
It was burgers and fries and cherry pies.
In 1971, fans waited hours to see Charlie Pride perform before capacity crowds. The Country Music Association's male vocalist and entertainer of the year played 4 sellout shows before more than 10,000 people.
And I had a seat on the very front row, and I watched it all on my radio.
Lionel Cartwright grew up in Mason and Marshall counties. He got his big break on the Jamboree in 1978 when he sat in with the staff band playing piano. Just before the start of the show, power went out in the theater.
They passed out those little sticks you break and they glow in the dark, so there's 1,000 of those things bobbing up and down out there. The only instrument that night on stage that would work without electricity was the piano. So I got to back up they brought out one by one, they brought out everybody that was going to sing, and I got to back them up. As soon as the show was done, they offered me the job as staff piano player.